Hello friends, this is Scott again, and Mr. Lincoln, and we're at the project garden today, and we're going to tackle the projects of planting potatoes and onions. So we're going to go from preparing the soil to all the way through the planting process. So stay tuned with us and check it out. We planted potatoes on a previous video, and I decided because of the length of the videos that I would split them into two. So today we're going to do the second half, which is the onion planting. Now the varieties that we're going to grow today, as you see on the left, is Walla Walla onions. Then we have some yellow Stuttgarters, which are the storage onions. And then we have some red Carmen, which are red, the onions you see in salads and things like that. Now you can plant onions from seed if you start them really early in the season, but I prefer just to go to the nursery and buy either plants, like you see the Walla Wallas, or in the bulb form, the dried bulb form, which is in the yellow Stuttgarters and the red Carmen. And then you'll also see them come in the plastic packs with a bunch of sown seeds in there that have come up. And the way you plant those is you have to pull them out and separate them out and then plant them individually. As I mentioned before at the project garden, there has not been an active garden in this spot for many years. He's covered it with landscape fabric, weed guard, just to try to keep the weeds down. So I'm removing that as I'm narrating this. I did find something I haven't seen a lot of in the garden is worms. We've lacking organic matter in this soil, and so there's not a lot of organic, natural life in the soil presently. My job this year is to get the garden going, and then I will start to develop a sustainable gardening style, which is more of the back to Eden, more of mulching the garden, no-till, those types of techniques that I'll talk about as this garden progresses. But this soil is very compact, and I need to be able to mix it up a little bit, churn it up, and so I'm going to start digging it just to loosen it up. As you can see while I'm digging, this soil is very compacted, and if I was to try to do a no-till or a mulch system without at least digging the bed some, it wouldn't be successful. So I've got to loosen the soil to start with, and then once we've mulched it and we start getting the natural soil life, the worms and other beneficials that'll move through the soil, we can not have to till again. The only place you need to dig holes is where you're actually going to be planting plants. So right now it's critical that I at least get the material turned up. But what I'm also doing is I'm going to build this soil up into more of a raised bed, so it's going to be a little bit more pliable to be able to get this garden functional. Got it all turned over as far as this plot goes, and now I'm adding the compost that I bought from the nursery. If I had any homemade compost here or aged horse manure, I would apply that now. I would never apply like wood bark, things like that, because you can't mix that into the soil, and I wouldn't be putting any unaged horse manure or cow manure, because these are going to be root crops, and we don't want to be growing root crops in fresh manures. That's just asking for health issues and troubles. Now I'm going to be spreading all this around as much as I've got here. I don't have a ton of material left. As you see, Mr. Lincoln is supervising, making sure that I'm doing a good job and getting the material spread out evenly to the best of my ability at this point. As I mentioned in the potato planting video, that I'm not going to do a lot of soil amendment to this soil because it has been fallow for several years. I am going to add some blood meal here to add a little bit of nitrogen to make sure that we have a little of that to grow our plants. So I'm just, again, scientifically measuring very carefully here to make sure that I've got every single square centimeter covered in blood meal. As I joked before, this is just to throw it on there and try to get it spread around as easily as possible, and it'll do the job. Bone meal, which is all phosphorus, and this is for the root development and the bulb development of the onions. Again, this is a very powdery, messy stuff, and as I mentioned, it's probably best, especially on a windy day, to wear a mask, but the wind is blowing in a pretty predominant direction, so I'm just going for it today. Bone meal is going to be very attractive to Mr. Lincoln, so I've got to keep his nose out of there. All it is just crushed up bones. Now I'm just raking that material in, the blood meal and the bone meal, just kind of getting it all mixed together as quickly and simply as possible, nothing fancy. Because this is going to be more at the root development level. Because after I mix all this material in with the soil I've got here, I'm going to start throwing compost on top, just to cover all this material so it doesn't blow away in the breeze. And I want all that material kind of at the growing root level as we get going, so the plants will get off to a good, healthy start, having that nitrogen and phosphorus readily available for them right where they need it when they start growing. Next, I'm raking the bed smooth, getting rid of any rocks, sticks, debris that might be in the soil. Just getting it level. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just want to make the bed fairly decent for planting. Getting her all spread, all the compost and all those minerals I put in the soil spread out a little bit. Now I will be adding mulch as the plants grow, as the onions grow, so we'll be building these beds. First up, I'm planting the Walla Walla plants just by laying them out approximately 4-5 inches apart. Now, Walla Wallas are very tasty onions. They don't store well, but you can basically eat them like an apple. They're very sweet and good eating. And they're simple to plant. You just poke a hole, stick them root down, and just put them into the soil. Nothing fancy about it. Now, if I would have been smart, I would have been planting from the other side, but I might as well just pack my beds down with my knees while I'm doing this, so I have to re-rake. It seems to be kind of par for the course today. Next up is the yellow Stuttgarter storage onions. Here I am just laying them on the surface of the soil, so I have the spacing 4 or 5 inches apart. Again, Mr. Lincoln is watching me like a hawk, making sure I'm doing a good job on these. But you just basically just lay them out. I've loosened the soil really nice with the fresh compost and the digging, so these will be really easy just to put root down and just poke a hole and stick them in the ground, and they're good to go. And here I am just putting the bulbs root down and shoving them into the soil. That's as easy as it is to plant these. Now, people ask me, why do you plant so many onions? You must really love onions. Well, the thing about onions is you can eat them at any stage of growth. You can eat them as green onions as they're coming up. You can wait till they bulb up a little bit and just have some baby onions. You can pick them the whole time until they're ready to be mature, full-grown onions. So I plant a lot because I'm going to pick some immature and I'm going to leave what's left to mature up, and then I store them over the winter, and I eat them during the cold months also. So onions are one of those vegetables that you just can't seem to ever have enough of. Last but not least are our red Carmen onions. So here's one that's already sprouting from the top. So this one wanted to get planted a couple weeks ago, and here's some that are still dormant. Simply, again, we just lay them on the surface. I'm only going to plant 1 row of these, I believe, because they're just, you don't eat as many red onions, and they don't store well. So there's something you need to, when you pick them, you need to eat them within, the first few weeks, or they start to get soft and they rot. So it's one of those crops that you got to just eat them as you pick them, kind of a thing. But again, you can pick them young, you can pick them as green onions, you can pick them as small shoots, all the way up through full bulb. And here is the fully planted bed with 3 different varieties. And all I have to do now is water them in and just wait for them to grow. I had a few onions left, so I brought them back to my backyard garden, and here I'm planting them in my raised worm bed that I'm using now as a planter. Simply spacing them out, again, 4 to 5 inches apart. It doesn't look like I'm getting that far apart as I'm placing them, but as I push them in the ground, I'm adjusting them. Soft mix, the soil's already been amended. I've got compost, I've got wood ash, I've got bone meal, I've got potting mix. I've got all kinds of good stuff in here. And these should do really well. I'm planting them right next to my garlic, which is kind of the pattern I like to do, and they both grow well together. They're good companion plants. So I'm just pushing them down in, very simple. They will push up a little bit as they grow, so I just tuck them back in the soil. Now, a lot of people say that if you want big onions, you don't want them buried very deep. I go ahead and plant them fairly deep now because they will push themselves out of the soil as they grow, and then I'll scoop the soil away from them so that they can form as big of a bulb as possible. Now here you see the fully planted bed. Doesn't look like much, but it'll start to grow. Now here's some pictures of previous gardens so you can kind of see the progress. So you start seeing a few eager ones coming up, and then as you see, they come up at a little bit different stages, but they all come up generally when you're planting the bulbs. They have nice green stalks. They look really good. But again, you can start picking them at this age or at any stage once they've started growing. You can always have pearl onions. You can have green onions, which are really nice to add to salads, to soups, to things like that. Here are some beautiful greener onions with a little bit of bulb on them. Sometimes onions don't grow big. You just end up with a smaller crop, and that's what happened with this group of onions. Now when these tops start to flop over, and you'll see a bigger patch of them doing that, then they're getting ready for harvest. And what you do is you pull them out of the ground once they're ready. Okay, and you'll see they're just, they'll come in all various sizes. Some years are better than others, but as long as you dry them and store them well in a cool, dark place, you'll have onions for most of the winter. Again, a lot of different varieties, a lot of different sizes. My wife likes to braid these, so after we let them cure and dry so that they store well, we'll hang them up and we put them next to our garlic, and we have onions and garlic in our pantry all winter long. Now, if you like this kind of content and you want to watch me continue to live my best rural life in the city, please like and share and subscribe. And thank you for watching this video.